All right, welcome back. So it's been 32, 33, 34 days now with Denali. I've had the bike for basically a month. Um, where am I at? What's my experience been? Well, my total has been 315 miles in that month. In the last 3 days, I've ridden 73 miles. Now, I am not just riding the bike. I also have switched up my diet a bit. I'm working on some other things. So I'm kind of doing like a little bit of a health thing all around, but the bike has been part of it, a big part of it. It was definitely a bit of an investment to purchase the bike. And so I've gone a couple steps further. And I have to tell you that what I've found is the bike is a very revealing tool when you're out on the bike and you're riding, um, and you eat not so great or you don't get enough sleep. It affects you, an hour into the ride, you feel it. I've never done any kind of exercise in my adult life that I feel is as clearly gauging as biking is. So in other words, if I get a good night's sleep and I have my normal small breakfast and I go out and I go for a ride and I feel good, by about the 1 hour mark, I'm still feeling good. If I don't get enough sleep, if I don't eat anything at all for breakfast, if maybe I didn't eat good the day before, I'm an hour into the ride and I'm dragging and I can feel it. So in that way, the bike has been a great tool for, doing leading a healthier lifestyle. So again, it's been 35 days. I rode 315 miles, 73 miles in the last 3 days. Let's talk about the gear. So, what gear would I recommend? Well, the first thing is actually just a duffel bag. Okay, get yourself a duffel bag you can keep all your gear in because it's kind of a pain. You got your gloves, you got your helmet, and then I like to have like I ride like a Poly Pro, but mountain biking is tough on clothes, and I find that it was, if I wear normal clothes or clothes I didn't buy for mountain biking, they pretty much get destroyed, especially if I'm doing like a real mountain bike ride. So you're gonna need some clothes specifically geared for bike riding. And so I just got some sports shorts at the store, nothing fancy. I didn't go crazy with those. I just have some regular t-shirts that I usually ride in. So if I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do like right out of my house, which is another thing, I have a couple rides set up and I do a 10-mile ride right out of my house. And I've done it, I do it with my wife. Courtney's 17, she's come out, she's done it with me a couple of times. She's getting to the point where she's like, hey, let's go for a ride, says that to me, which is nice. It's good to see that happening. But I'll get back to the gear to go through this stuff. So I started off buying this helmet for mountain biking, and this is a great helmet for mountain biking. What's the difference between one helmet and the other? Well, mountain bike helmet has a longer visor, which is actually great because it affords you're usually in an upright body position when you're riding more aggressive mountain bike trails. And so it's nice to have a visor to shield your eyes from the sun. You're also, when you're mountain biking and you're riding those mountain bike trails, you're really trying to pick a line. You're very actively riding on rough mountain bike trails. So you're really relying on your vision to pick a line, very actively riding. And so having the longer visor, I find really truly does help. The other thing about a true mountain bike helmet is that it's a lot, thicker. It's a lot bulkier, and we're ripping down some really tight trails. Trees get tight, trails get tight. I've definitely hit my arm off of trees. I haven't actually hit my helmet off a tree yet, but a traditional mountain bike helmet, this would be a mountain bike style helmet, is great in that environment, and it works great in that environment. The problem with this helmet is that when you get into, like, say, my wife and I will go ride it on the bike trail. Well, a lot of times there, you're riding in a more leaned forward body position. So this longer visor is now blocking your peripheral vision. Okay, so in a situation like that, this helmet I actually find is pretty annoying. If we go out to the bike trail, I don't like to wear this helmet. I prefer to wear this helmet, which has no visor on it. This way I can be in a more down position and still have more peripheral vision. So there's definitely a legit, calling in a mountain bike helmet and a road scenario type helmet. And I don't think it's specific to the bike you're riding, it's specific to the style you're riding. You go out and ride on the road on your mountain bike, this is going to be a better helmet for you. You're going to like this better. You're in the woods, picking through nasty trails, riding in a more upright position, trying to pick a line as you're going through rocks and boulders. This is probably the better helmet. I know that in one environment I want this one, in one environment I want this one. Again, the duffel bag is nice because you just throw them both in there. So wherever I'm riding, I just pick whichever helmet is best for me. Now gloves, I've also got some different gloves here. I gotta kind of find them because I haven't been wearing the other ones. So I started off with these gloves, okay? Just cheap. I think these were 20 bucks. All right, and there's not a lot to them. Not that these gloves are bad. These gloves are okay. They'll get the job done. They're okay to start riding with. But like the black stuff does kind of come off. The padding is kind of thin. Okay, I just replaced these last week with these gloves, okay? So yeah, I mean, they do match my bike, but the padding in these is significantly thicker, okay? So when you're getting out there now and doing 25 and 30 and 40 mile rides, I have to say it's worth it to have these gloves. These are great gloves anytime I'm riding 10 miles or more. I want these gloves. I don't want the other ones. So these have been a nice addition. For traditional mountain bike riding or more aggressive or for downhill type stuff, I have these gloves. So when I go and ride at Thatcher's Park, I actually wear these. So these are full finger gloves that offer me a lot more protection. And I feel like these have actually served a purpose. There's a couple times I've been riding where I lost my balance a little bit and I grabbed a tree. And so this glove, protects my hands so that my finger gloves, I'm not getting my fingers torn up. So these are nice to have. And again, they're in this bag. If I'm going there and I want them, they're right at my fingertips. For that downhill environment, now I haven't even got to use these yet. These are super light motocross pants or motocross / mountain bike. So if I'm going someplace where I'm taking like the gondola up, like a bike park type of environment, these actually have some pads built into the side of them. If I'm doing downhill, this will be what I want. And I haven't done any of that yet. I want to get a little better with the biking, a little stronger with it before I do that. But they're here in the bag. They're ready to go when I need them. Now, for the off-road mountain bike trails, I'm going with long sleeve shirts, okay? And again, these I feel like are really worth it. You're banging off trees, this is gonna help protect you in a crash and any kind of thing like that where you're rubbing up against something. For traditional style mountain biking or harder trails, like when I go up and ride Thatcher's Park, for me that's challenging. I like these long sleeve shirts. And again, they're right in this bag. So it's not like when I go mountain biking, I have to go track all my stuff down. It's nice because we're pretty busy. We have a lot of stuff going on. It's nice to just go grab my bag and all I have to do is throw my water bottle in the end of it and maybe hers, and out the door we go. When I get there, I just grab whatever gear is appropriate for that ride that we're doing. Now, one thing on gear and clothing I have to say is, so this is, I believe, Casatelli, a traditional biking jersey, okay? They run small. This is an extra large, right? I think extra large. No, this is a large. This is a large, and it does not fit me, okay? I don't own a large shirt that doesn't fit me. This is a large, and this was the first shirt that I ordered, and it's like almost tight on me. So be aware, biking clothes run small. The biking community is a light community. That's why I'm trying to get in. So this is another jersey that I ordered. I said, all right, well, I'll fix that problem. And I ordered another jersey, and this one here, this is an extra large. This is an extra large, and it's still snug on me. embarrassing. Now I do need to lose some weight. I'm hovering around 205 right now, and I'm trying to get down. But an extra large t-shirt, an any normal t-shirt, I would be swimming in. This thing is still, to me, snug on me. I would call this form-fitting in the extra large size. So just something to keep in mind if you're buying shirts for mountain biking. Traditional mountain biking shirts are now like this. Here's a perfect example. This is just a regular long sleeve Polypro shirt. This is a large size and it's loose on me. This is a normal shirt. Biking clothes run small, so just be aware of that. So that's pretty much it for the bag and what I'm carrying in the bag. The helmet, the shoes, I'd recommend you pick up a pair of shoes specifically for mountain biking. I did so. I just ordered them on eBay, like $40 pair of hiking shoes, because I had hiking shoes that I hiked 150 miles in that were in beautiful condition. I took them mountain biking one time and they were covered in mud and trashed and beat up, and so mountain biking can be pretty rough. I'd suggest you buy a pair of shoes specifically for mountain biking. Now there's some high-end ones. I don't necessarily think you need to go that route to get the thing going. You know, if you're just getting into it or whatever, just buy yourself a specific pair of shoes for riding, because after trashing 2 or 3 pairs of your normal shoes, that will get frustrating. So buy yourself a pair of riding shoes, no matter what they are. We talked about gloves, duffel bag, pants, water bottles. We have like 10 water bottles here now. This bike runs smaller ones better. The larger ones are kind of hard to get in and out of the rack, and so I kind of use these smaller ones. We'll get into that more in a minute. I've been putting 4C flavor in them, okay, just the little flavor packets. So, you know, obviously you're adding some calories or whatever, but it's nice to have a little energy boost. So I've got like an ice farm going here in the freezer now. So I've got tons of ice cubes, and we put them in the water bottles, and then I put a little flavor packet in there and then put water in and shake them up a little bit. That little flavor boost, the little energy boost is nice on your ride. You know, like my wife didn't like it at first, and now she's like, now she does. It's good. It's good to have. So that's pretty much the gear that I've acquired, not specific to the bike. So we'll talk about the bike, modifications I made to the bike in a month. Well, number one thing is I added a speedometer. Really great now. Wireless speedometers are common technology now. You know, 20 years ago when I was really riding, it was, you know, not really a thing. It was $100 for a wired one. You didn't consider a wireless. I paid $25 for this wireless one on eBay. Now, the batteries in it were dead, and it is going to need to be programmed to your specific wheel size. And the other thing I did was I took a small flathead screwdriver and I stretched the springs on the battery compartment so that they push on the battery a little harder. And I haven't had any problems. I had to put new batteries in this, in the speedometer, and the receiver requires battery with wireless. And I stretched those springs that contact the batteries, and it's worked flawlessly. So that's been good. Now this bike has tubeless tires. Came with tubeless tires when I purchased it, and again, this bike is used. So I was on the fence. Like, it needed a set of tires when I bought it. It was the one thing the guy said, "Hey, look, it's going to need tires soon. That's the next thing to replace." So I went with Maxxis Minion SS's. Which is definitely a non-aggressive tire, because a majority of the riding I'm doing is bike trail, and it's for exercise. And then what we call the picnic table ride is like 10 miles out of my house is like 4 miles off-road, like what I would call flow trails. They're not really that aggressive. So I put the Minion SS's on there by Maxxis. I love it. Tubeless tires, the thing with tubeless tires is that, so the valve stem is not part of the tube anymore. It has to be inserted in the rim separately. And then you got to make sure that the rim is sealed with some kind of rim tape. And then you put the tubeless tire on, and then you put a fluid inside the tire that is like a stop leak that's in there. And then it's going to require you to purchase one of these. This is like a high, well, there's some options. You can use a compressor to instantly hit that tire with air to fill it up, or you can use this. This is like an air chamber. So you put the pressure in here, and then you connect it to the wheel, and then you turn this knob, and it fills the tire right up. Bang! It hits it with the air pressure. You know, and then you can top it off with a regular. This is not a pump. This is a whole separate chamber. And so that's something you'll need for tubeless. Now, as far as the tubeless goes, I love it. The tubeless is wonderful. I would highly recommend the tubeless. There's a video you should really watch about what it takes to kill a tubeless tire with the sealant in it. And I'm very confident. One of the problems with the full suspension mountain bike is that there's not a lot of storage on here. So all I'm carrying for tires is a set of tire levers and a little seal kit, which honestly I hope to not need. We'll have to see how that goes. I may move to carrying a very small spare tube at some point, but I'll tell you, with the rides I'm doing, 10 to 30 miles, I think I could nurse a punctured tire that it would kind of heal itself. Again, you got to watch the video to see that, and I could get it back. So replace that. The seat was like a race face, hardcore, downhill seat. I replaced it with an MTB seat that's just got, or a WTB seat with just a little bit of padding. Huge difference. If you're going to pump out the miles, you need a little padding. At least I do anyways. This has got the dropper seat post, which I covered in the second video. I talk a lot about this dropper seat post. That's a terrific thing to have. I love it. So that's pretty much as I've modified the bike. That's about all the changes I made to the bike. I added this really small bag to the dropper post. Now, again, storage is very limited on this bike because there's so many moving parts. I have this very small Lezine bag. It's kind of a high-end bag amongst the bags, and it's one of the smaller ones because I'm hanging it off of a seat that's on a dropper post. So I mean, I can tell you that I haven't had any issues with this bag. It's run up and down on the dropper post with no problem, and it's worked as advertised. This is waterproof. I carry a multi-tool inside this bag, and so that's what I've got in there. Tire levers, a multi-tool, tire repair kit, a small patch kit, which, you know, hopefully I don't need, I shouldn't need. And then I usually stick my phone in there when I'm riding, so I don't really like to be bothered. So another thing after a month is maintenance. I highly recommend, if you buy it, especially if you buy a used bike, you're going to be doing maintenance. And I recommend you learn how to do the maintenance yourself. You're riding the bike, you're gonna have to fix it if it breaks out in the woods, so do the maintenance yourself. Some of the tools that you're gonna need though, so like this is a caliper, measuring caliper. I got this for measuring like the brake thicknesses, and so I know when the pads need to be replaced and when the discs need to be replaced. This park tool for making adjustments. But you gotta have Allen keys. This is for measuring tire depth, just so I can kind of keep an eye on how fast I'm burning up my tires. Of course, good pair of needle nose pliers. As often as I use these, I went with the park tool version. They're spring loaded, which is nice. So when you grab something, you let go, it just opens up, which is nice. Let's see what else. Of course, you gotta have your Allen keys. There is a couple things in here. So this bike has through hubs on it. Okay, so the back through hub is 12 millimeters and the front hub is 20 millimeters. So you're going to need to familiarize yourself with those if you're not. And so like you need this piece right here. This is a special piece to take the cassette off of the back axle. So to order this park tool item right there, this is a spoke tool, and I've had to use this. I hit a curb. I had a spoke on the back left side that was making some noise. I straightened it out. The rim has a small dent in it, but I was able to kind of tweak it a little bit with this spoke tool. So a spoke tool is something you really want to have in your toolbox. Extra pair of tire levers in there. You never know when you're going to need them. This is nice to have. Brushes for cleaning the bike. I mean, I just got these at Walmart. This is just, soap and water for cleaning the bike when it gets super dirty and you really want to go through it with the cleaning. Now, I use this for Presto valve, Schrader valve tires. So this is my pump that I use for that. Another thing that you are going to probably want to look into is torque wrenches if you're going to be doing work on these bikes. So for example, my front fork is a 2015 Fox 36, okay? So that fork has pinch connectors on the axle. The force that they're supposed to be tightened to is only 19 inch-pounds. 19 inch-pounds, that's not a lot. That's not a lot. So familiarize yourself with the torque settings on your bike because they're important. And that's a perfect example. I easily, if I didn't know that, could take this tool and over torque those bolts and damage that fork. So get to know your bike's torque specs, and you know, a seasoned mechanic or somebody who gets used to this, maybe even me after a year or two, I won't really necessarily need the torque wrenches. But in the meantime, if I'm working on $1,000 fork, all it takes is a $40, like I have this little tool here that I purchased for doing work on the rifles. And, you know, I can just dial this to 19 inch-pounds, put the bit in there, tighten it up, click, it clicks, and I know that they're set perfectly. To me, it's like, I even called Fox because I thought the information was wrong. The axle is at 19 Newton meter, or 19 inch-pounds, and the pinch bolts are at 19 inch-pounds. That's it. And I was thinking maybe it's Newton meters and you got to convert it. Now, one thing I will say about torque stuff and torque settings, it's confusing. You have inch-pounds, pound-feet, and Newton meters. So inch-pounds, pound-feet are basically imperial system. Newton meters is metric. But like when you look at the crank arm calls for, and there's a sticker right on here that says 12 to 14 Newton meters. Okay, we'll go to 13. So I have an app on my phone that will convert Newton meters to pound feet because my wrench that's most appropriate to do that type of work isn't in Newton meters, it's in pound feet. So I use the app on my phone to convert 13 Newton meters to whatever amount of pound feet it is. I don't remember, but and then you just unlock the lock, twist the bottom of this. You know, that's how this particular one works. Set the number of pound feet and then put the torque on it until it clicks. So if you're gonna be doing work on, you know, on the bike, you should be familiarizing yourself with your torque specs, and you know, having the right tools to do the job makes all the difference in the world. You're going to need grease. Now, I have all this stuff in my toolbox. All of this is in this toolbox. Grease. This is Free Hub oil. Okay, so this is Free Hub oil because I've got Industry 9 Free Hubs on the back of this bike. And so I actually have a Free Hub grease coming that I'm gonna use on that instead, that can quiet that hub down a little bit because it is pretty loud. Now again, to get to that Free Hub, I'm gonna have to use my Park Zone cassette tool. So look at your bike and figure out which tools you're gonna need, and then order them. And you're gonna need an oil, you're gonna need grease, and then you're gonna come up with. So when you put the tires on, I actually tried this as well. I tried to put these tires on without the compressor bottle just to see, like, hey, is this really needed? It is. I couldn't get it. I was pumping and pumping and pumping, and I was putting pressure on the tire. I started making a mess. It was a huge headache. Then I compressed the chamber up to 50 pounds and put it on, open it up, poof, the tire popped right on. Now this is another product here, which is Easy Fit. Basically, you put this on the tire bead around the tire. It's basically just soap. It goes on with a little sponge, and that helps the bead seat itself to the rim. So I did one without it, and I did one with it. And sure enough, the one I did with it popped onto the rim perfectly even. The one I did without it, the line on the wheel was closer on one side of the rim than it was on the other, and I wound up having to drain the pressure out, put this stuff on the wheel again, and then go through the process again and dump the pressure on. And this time when it popped, this stuff was on there to help it kind of pop out. So it worked good. It worked, that product worked good. So you don't necessarily need this stuff. And I bet you could just take soap, put it on a little rag, and go around the perimeter. It would probably work just as good. But it's nice to have the right tools for the job. They're only a couple of bucks. Get in there and make sure that you're... when I took the axle apart, when I took the crank apart, which requires another special tool. This little tool right here is the version that I have to take this cap out of the center of the crank. And then when that goes back in, this thing is what puts pressure on the bearings, is only 1 to 2 Newton meters. That's super light. So again, I had to use this small torque wrench to make sure I had that setting just right when I put this crank back together. But when I got in there and I got to the right side, the drive side, the bearing case had no grease left in it. It was almost dry. So taking it all apart and lubing it up was definitely worth it, which is kind of a funny story because I was getting a creak in the bike. It was the pedal. I took the whole bike all apart, hubs, axles, crank, everything else, put the bike all back together, and I go to test to make sure everything is good. The chain's back on. I put a new chain on it. As soon as I go to start turning, I realize it's the pedal that's creaking. But it was okay. I mean, I really needed to tear the bike apart anyways. It was the first time I ever did. So that gave me a chance to go in and make sure all the torque specs were set right. And for me to really get my fingers on everything and make sure everything was all good. And everything was almost perfect with this bike. Most of the bearings had oil on them. But that, like I said, in the crank, one set of bearings, there's like oil in a little channel, or grease in a little channel. There was no grease in that one channel at all. And I think it's on the drive side, maybe because there's some heat there. It dried it up. I don't know. But anyways, I fixed that problem, and the bike is back up and running. My little technique is I keep a pair of scissors in my toolbox, and I just have some rags in there. So like, for example, every couple of rides when I oil the chain, I just cut off a piece of a rag and I spray my chain spray, or I've got this liquid stuff comes out of a bottle here. Put that on the rag and then freewheel the chain through the rag to clean it and put oil on it. So I'm not spraying the stuff all over the bike and everything else. Then I just take that rag and I just throw that little piece of rag away. And it just keeps everything clean. It keeps the bike running well and all that sort of stuff. So last thing is, like, for riding and ride tips, I'd highly recommend you get an app and you start tracking your miles. The speedometer will give you average miles per hour, which to me is the best part of the speedometer. Biggest reason to have it is so it tells you your distance and your average speed. And as time goes on, of course I'm looking to get my average speed back up, back up, back up. I know when I was younger, that was like a #1 training tool. And a lot of clubs would measure, you know, hey, we're going on a ride today. We average 17 miles an hour. Hey, we're going on a ride today. We average 15 miles an hour. Or, oh man, we had a brutal ride last week. We averaged 17 3/4 over 50 miles. The speedometer makes that very easy to keep track of. I don't necessarily need to rely on my phone. So I guess I'm just old school, and I like the speedometer. But I still recommend you have an app for your phone and track this stuff. The other thing I would kind of recommend is that you, like we have the Thatcher's Park ride. We have found a ride there that we like. It's 5 miles of off-road trails, and we really like that ride. And I've been doing that same ride consistently when I go there. We have another ride right out of the house. We call it the picnic table ride that leads right down to the Hudson River. And that ride's 10 miles. We've done it, I think, 12 times now. So set up a set of rides. Do I have any regrets as far as the bike? Yeah, I have a big regret. I wish I had bought it sooner. I wish I didn't wait until... I'm 39 now. I stopped riding when I was 16. I wish that I had purchased this bike 10 years ago, at least 10 years ago. I think my health would be significantly better. The bike has driven me to make some changes in my diet. I feel better, I need less sleep, and I have more energy, and it's been a great experience. So that's my experience after a month. These are the parts and tools that I've acquired. I'm a guy that likes to turn wrenches. I like to work on the bike. So, you know, I've always fixed bikes. You know, every kid in the neighborhood had their bike at our house. And so I like to fix bikes, but some people may not. If you're not in that class, then maybe you don't need all these tools. Maybe you just need a couple of the basic tools, and you can do a couple basic maintenance things on it and let the bike shop do 2-3 times a year, do major services. And that's fine, but for me, I like to turn wrenches, and I have worked with my local bike shop. I've bought a lot of these parts from them. My local bike shop, you know, I've got to know the owner. You know, he gave me everything I needed for the tires, gave me pointers on how to do it. I had never worked with tubeless tires before. It was a piece of cake. I literally never done that process before, and I did it by myself with just what the bike store owner from the Bike Barn had gave me the information, walked me through the process, recommended that I use this product here, and gave me the valve stem tool and everything that I needed. So hopefully build a relationship with your local bike shop. I know around me I got like 4 or 5, but there's one that I like. You know, the other ones are not right for me for different reasons. But there's one bike shop that I really like, and I like the owner, and I like the people that work there, and build a relationship with your local bike shop. And I was surprised because I didn't buy the bike there, and they were still very receptive to me bringing the bike in. They were still receptive to helping me through any work with it. I kind of thought they were going to be like, well, you bought it somewhere else, take it somewhere else. I mean, I bought it used. I didn't buy it from a store at all, but they were totally cool about it. You know, hey, I want a new seat, and they walked me through all the seats, and they recommended this one. I bought it. I love it. Hey, I need new tires. The guy walked me through, you know, all the options, and I told him what kind of rides I do. He recommended these tires, you know, told me all the stuff I was going to need. I even tried to like get away with not using the compressor pump. And it's like he gave me very solid direction. So build a relationship with your local bike shop. Do as much business with them as possible, and they can help you and give you direction on where to ride. That is a priceless thing to have. And so far, 33 days, it's been an amazing experience. It's been a great experience. I'm really happy with it. Not only have I ridden 315 miles, but my wife, the kids have all ridden more miles than they have in the past. Our youngest couldn't ride a bike going into this, and now she rides 5 miles at a time. So the other day we were doing a ride. That's the last thing the other day we were doing a ride, and we were all out there. It was me, my wife. We had our 18-year-old, our 16-year-old, and our 10-year-old, and we were all having fun. We were all enjoying it. We were all like goofing around. It was after dinner, and we just all got on the bikes and went for a ride. And it was the first time that I had seen all of us having fun together in a while. And it was great. It was really good. So the mountain bike experience has been terrific. If you're thinking about it, absolutely do it. If you have one, hopefully some of these tips will help you out on maybe some of the tools and some direction. It's been a learning process with the torque specs, and you're going to have to learn all those individual ones for your bike. Dropper post, I mean, you can't just go and tighten up the seat clamp because you could damage the dropper post because it's a sleeve that sits inside and then the post goes through it. So if you tighten the clamp up that holds it to the frame too much, you'll damage the dropper post. So you need to know the recommended torque spec. Of course, that doesn't consider the individual bike, so there's still some room for error. So pay attention to torque specs. Torque specs, grease, oil, keep it clean, and your bike will be happy, and you'll be happy, and you can burn a lot of miles. And we'll see you next time. See you on the trails.